me to you. So
You know, you gotta do these things. You gotta connect. It's for me. It's all about connecting with you all. And like I did Swapaka for the first time earlier in the year. Found my people. So for me, it's like, yeah, if I have a late night, that's all right. I'll energize. Just so I can keep on, keep on keeping on, keep on connecting with everybody and talking nerd shit and stuff.
it's the best. It's the best.
Yeah, I know. My
I'm so
partner
glad
gets
you're
up
here.
and she was like, "Oh God, have fun at your meeting with the international nerds." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
we're gonna have a great time."
Maybe that should be our tagline, like Pop Culture Association International Nerds.
Yeah, there we go. Makes it sound a little bit James Bondish, doesn't it?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So,
International mystery nerds, nerds of I don't know, man of mystery. So how do we do that?
that's where
We're
we get it.
taking suggestions.
Definitely have to get all the mystery writer um, folks in on that one.
We need help with a tagline, friends. Uh,
So,
well,
whereabouts in the
wonderful.
world are you, Amanda?
I am in the state of Indiana in the United States, so in the
All
Midwest.
right, I've been there. Yeah,
You've been
Gen
to
Con.
Indiana? Oh,
Yeah,
Gen Con.
Gen
Okay,
Con. Yeah, yeah, no,
that
no,
makes total sense.
yeah, ran a couple of years ago now. Ran D&D and a few other
Oh,
games
very
there
cool.
for various different publishers. Because I'm a role playing nerd.
I love that. Extra
Yeah,
special.
yeah, yeah. No, it was fun.
So you were
Con-
like an hour away from me.
right. Okay.
I'm
Yeah. No,
about an hour west.
I enjoyed the city. It was quite pretty. That big statue in the middle of the city was a little bit imposing. And I guess that's the small cultural differences. Um, yeah, we don't have a lot of statues to dead
Oh no.
people here. You all have a lot of those,
We like statues of dead people.
Especially South Carolina. Like when I was in, okay, maybe I'm giving something away here, but when I was in South Carolina, I honestly thought I was in a different country. The country called the Confederate States of America, because there is absolutely zero indication of any other loyalties going on in South Carolina.
There are a lot.
It
Yeah.
was like if you did not know better. Yeah, no, that was an experience. The Soda
Yeah,
City
it's
Comic Con was pretty good too. I enjoyed that.
was that was that in where is that at?
Columbia. Yeah, Columbia.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. I was thinking Charleston, but
Mm.
yeah. But Columbia makes sense.
Got to say, I enjoyed the local con there in Columbia a hell of a lot more than
Mm.
I did Dragon Con. But that's because
Oh,
I'm in my 50s and my partying
yeah,
days are kind of well behind me.
Will
I
you be
think.
at
yeah.
Dragon Con at the end of the month?
Sorry, say
Are you
again. Yep.
going back? Yep, headed.
No, no, it's a long way to go for what I thought was like I teach events management. So perhaps that had something to do with it. But I thought, how has anyone not been killed by this convention? Um, Immediately. So my professional radar was up and my professional hackles were up quite a bit because it was a very dangerous con where I would not be surprised if people have been killed at it in the past by the fact that there is no traffic control. Um, there's a perfectly good, was it 110,000 seat stadium just down the road that can accommodate the entire convention. But no, tradition has old people and unfit nerds climbing around, was it 6 city blocks in that heat? Now I'm Australian, I'm used to the heat, it's fine, but I'm not sure that a lot of people who are visiting are. No police presence, policing traffic. It was a recipe for disaster. Over here, it would have been shut down. just for safety violations. So yeah, no, I won't be going back. I did email them and tell them, say, hey, I'm a professional in this space, and you guys need to really fix this up. Because again, I was volunteering while I was there, and yeah, the overall experience was one that was less than fun from the safety point of view, and they're really arrogant at DragonCon, I've got to say. Anyway, but I'm old, so it's not really sort of pitched at mid 50-year-olds. I don't think so. They got a different market, and that's all right. As long as I don't hurt people, I'm fine. But yeah, I don't think I'll be coming back for that one.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that was your experience. That's terrible.
Yeah, like Gen Con, definitely coming back for that sometime.
I prefer Dragon Con to Comic Con, because what I hate about Comic Con is if you want to be in a room, if you want to be in like Hall H, you can line up 2 days before and just never leave.
Yeah,
I sat through 5 panels of something I didn't want to see to be in the 4 p.m. panel. And you never leave the room. You're allowed a bathroom pass, and you're allowed in and out for 10 minutes to go to the bathroom, and that's it. And if you leave after that and don't come back, you're kicked out of the room and get to get back in the line that sometimes is harsh. A day long.
That is harsh. Yeah, see, again, I was there as a volunteer for DragonCon, so I was up in the role-playing section running classic Traveller games all like the entirety of the time. So I saw like one thing, which was one panel whilst I was there, and that was it. The rest of the time I was just nerding out, being a Traveller GM.
After years of Comic-Con and waiting and sitting in rooms for things I didn't want to hear, I loved the fact that DragonCon clears the room in between each panel.
Yeah. So the panel I went to was really interesting. Actually, it was on Litfic and the intersection between Litfic and Genrefic, which was kind of interesting because a lot of the times those two, don't intersect so much. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. But yeah, you're right, they do kick you out. But there's only like about half a dozen in that one of us in that one, so it's like on the first day. But it is a huge convention compared to what we have here in Australia.
And it's nothing compared to San Diego Comic-Con that's 4 times that size.
Our biggest is PAX. About 60,000 people. It's like tiny compared to what you guys have.
So interesting. Maybe we should do a whole Membership Matters on cons. At that note, I'm going to get us kicked off and started. It's so good to see everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Friday. Tragically, it is our Membership Matters in August, which means that for many of us, we're getting ready to start fall semester if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, which probably means that everything you promised yourself you were going to do this summer is now the things that you're trying to cram into 12 days. So I hope that you are not as hectic as you could be. I hope that you give yourself some grace for the things that you did not get done that you were supposed to get done this summer. Welcome. I'm Amanda Hobson. I serve as the Vice President of Belonging, Outreach, and Membership for the Pop Culture Association. I know we've got at least one other board member here. Heather, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, everyone. I am Heather Porter, and I serve as the treasurer on the board, and I apologize for not being on camera.
Heather is probably at work. As am I. And then our amazing Riley with our PCA, our headquarters, which is our management company, Ethereum. I think she might be on the phone dealing with the a concern. If you've attempted to go to our webpage today, you know that something funky is going on with our webpage. So Riley is doing back-end work to get our webpage up and running. Again, we hope, fingers crossed, everyone send good vibes that the tech gods let us have our website back. They might be holding it hostage. So we'll see what's going on. So welcome to Membership Matters. For those of you who were here last month, we started talking about setting scholarly agendas. And so we're going to think about part 2 of that. And we're going to start leaning towards how do you set a scholarly agenda? And we're going to use a specific case study of the Pop Culture Association conference. So, but really quickly, just as a recap, for those who couldn't join us last month, a couple of key takeaways were really to think about defining your project, creating that task list for what you're going to do, establishing a realistic timeline. And what we mean by realistic timeline is to be realistic about who you are as a scholar, and what works for you and what you know about yourself. I use myself as an example. As a neurodivergent kid, I set timelines and pretend like they don't ever exist. I don't do to-do lists because they make me cranky. I don't write these things down because they make me frustrated. So for me, a timeline is like a amorphous thing. And if I set a timeline, it's not real deadlines. So nothing matters anymore, right? So you might be someone who does great. I know Heather Porter does great with timelines and outlines. That is not my experience. So think about who you are as a scholar, thinking about what writing and research rituals you have to get yourself into the space of doing that, whether that's lighting a candle that's specific before you start in, whether it's you having your 3 beverages. Here are my 3 beverages. Look, 3 beverages. Not joking. Definitely no. I don't have ADHD. It's fine. So whatever those rituals are, to make sure you have them in place. And then we talked a lot about accountability. Do you need an accountability partner? Do you need someone that you're gonna write with? Do you need a writing circle? Think about what you need from those. So that was our key takeaways. I know there are a few people here that were here last week. Does anyone I keep seeing last week, like we met like last Friday. We did not. It was 1 month ago. Anyone who was here last month have anything that they remember that they took away, or anything that sparked in them from that conversation before we dig into our case study? I'm looking specifically at Chris and Latoya. Okay.
I was typing in chat, but I'll say it here instead. Yeah, I do have actually a ritual. It's write it down, forget, panic, then wait for the hyperfocus. And so one of the key takeaways. Neurodiverse also. So part of that team. And part of the reasons I'm back again this time is I actually had a lot of very valuable takeaways from that, just listening to how other people go about managing. So the key takeaway for me was I am not alone. There are like I work from home, and lecture from home, do my research from home. I'm in a rural part of Victoria. So if it were not 2 a.m. and dark, you would see some lovely gum trees outside and kangaroos and rabbits, right? So I don't go into campus at all. So I don't see people, which is awesome. But at the same time, it's also not so good because I forget how to human very, very quickly. So the key takeaway for me was, hey, you're not alone. You can do this. And you're part of a community that, others struggle as well. So, and not that it's like, yes, others deal with this as well. But it's like, others deal with this as well. So, yeah. That was the main thing for me, which was great to know that we all have different ways of doing it, and we all manage to do it somehow.
Yeah.
So
because we're a bunch of badass, brilliant scholars.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Latoya, did you want to share anything?
Actually, yes. Hi, everyone. Okay, Amanda. So I wasn't at last month's meeting, which I should have been. I was at the June one.
I'm sorry, I
But
misremembered.
I should have been, because I have two major projects. Actually, I have a journal article that is due next week. And I have procrastinated on that article for an entire month. So I am very happy to be here today because I do need the momentum. I am a neurodivergent girly as well. And I will always and forever pretend like timelines do not exist. Time, what is time? It's a concept. We made it up. So yes, but I am very happy to be here today because I do need a kick in the pants. So yes.
Cool. Well, I'm sorry I misplaced that you weren't here last month. Is anyone else who was here have anything to share? If you do, you're welcome to pop it in chat. I'm gonna do a pause for like 2 beats to see if anyone wants to pop in and share any takeaways. Okay, I have a beat in my head, and we made it. Pop it in the chat if you do. And really, what we're gonna do today was we're gonna do a lot more like thinking through, right? This, and here's how we're gonna do it. Okay, so let's take your PCA conference paper as a case study. Now, some of you might have a case study that is far more pressing than your Pop Culture Association paper. Looking at you, Latoya. Right, might have a far more pressing thing. Okay, so feel free if you would rather work through that timeline instead of doing what we're all doing as a big group. That is totally cool. But I put some dates here. So this is like your sneak preview. These haven't been released even, I don't think, right? So submissions, for instance, for the 2026 Atlanta Conference for Pop Culture Association should open on or about September 1st. Right, so that means that is not that far away, my friends. Are you ready for that? I'm not ready for that. That's like 15 days away. That doesn't exist. Again, time is weird. Right, but they close on November 30th. So that means we have till November 30th to get those proposals in. Okay. Now, what we know is that the conference is until April 8th, which means some of us are going to write our conference paper on April 8th with the hope that we do not actually present it till April 9th. That's our hope, right? Many of you will likely write your paper, one would hope, far in advance of April 8th. But at least by November 30th, we have to have a proposal. See, all of you all are here because you are just like me. I keep seeing the chat and I'm like, this is a thing. This is a problem, my friends. So it's fresh. That's Heather's way of being like, yes, I don't procrastinate. I wait until it's close so that it's fresh in my mind. Y'all, the things we tell ourselves. I love it. Yes, we struggle with narrowing down to just one idea. It's so hard. Okay, so what we know is submissions open on the 1st, they close on the 30th of November. So what does that mean? What do we have to look at and look for? Okay, so what are some key considerations in your proposal design? What should you include in that proposal? I like to think of your proposal for this conference as an abstract of your conference paper. Now, I know that seems weird because most of us don't write our abstract. Okay, let me rephrase that. I think I was taught not to write my abstract until after my paper was done, right? Were any of you else taught that? I don't know, it's what they told us in doc school, and I always found that confusing. Right, so, okay, so think of it as your elevator speech pitch of what you're going to do at the conference, okay? So your proposal design needs to have, oh, sorry, I only have one screen and I can't see half of what's on my screen because y'all are covering it all up. So I keep clicking on the wrong thing. So it should, but it needs to have a strong thesis. It needs to have an indication of your scholarly sources, and it needs to demonstrate how your proposal is related to pop culture and or the subject area. Now, sometimes that's easy, right? If I am presenting a paper, I often present in the vampire area. If I am presenting a paper on the AMC Interview with the Vampire, it's probably pretty clear to people how that's related to pop culture and the subject area of vampires. But last year, for instance, I presented on doing archival research on the manuscripts and materials donated to an archive by the author Chelsea Quinn Yarbrough. Okay, I did it in vampires. Well, okay, yes, Chelsea Quinn Yarbrough wrote some vampire novels, but is that really vampire studies, and how is it popular culture studies? So I had to do some fancy footwork in my abstract to make sure it was clear, right, why I was presenting it in vampires and why it was pop culture studies, right? So hopefully that makes some sense. Let's pause for a second. I'm gonna pull you all back up. What things are you all thinking about with your proposals? And you're welcome to use yourself as an example. You might not have even thought about it yet, or you might have 17 ideas going on in your brain. I want to write a paper about Sinners this year, so that's what's in my brain, just because it was so good. But I also have 75 ideas about what I want to write about Sinners. So maybe you too might have a thing that you're thinking about, but not a narrowed down topic. Anyone want to share or think through what their considerations are for their proposal? I'm singing a song in my head in case you didn't notice.
I'll bite.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
I'm not fully narrowed down yet, but I do know it's going to be related to rocket science columns in 1950s and 60s pulp magazines.
That's awesome. Say more.
Okay, well, I mean, it's part of a big project I'm doing, and I started, I was actually with you at Bowling Green doing pulp magazine studies a couple summers ago, and I did a lot of work with their pulp collection there. And so my bigger project is on pulp art and how it relates to space flight. So I talked last year at the conference about pulp covers and critiques of pulp covers as they relate to advances in science and understanding of space. But I'd like to drill down a little bit more this time and actually look at the columns a bit more and how the science columns kind of advance with our understanding of real rocket scientists, real rocket science, and become by real rocket scientists over time.
Tanya, I love this. Okay, so here we just listened to Tanya do exactly what many of us are thinking about, right? Like, how do we take the thing, right? This big idea or the big project. I mean, I created a bingo for the conference last year, and one of the bingo spots was this is a part of a larger project, because almost everyone says that, right? I don't think I've ever walked into a presentation or a paper at Pop Culture and someone's like, this is the whole project, it's done, right? Like, because usually it is a part of a much bigger ongoing piece of research, which is what Tanya's talking about here, right? Like, this is a part of that broader thing. So how did we then narrow it down? Some of us do randomly write random papers just for pop culture that are a little bit more narrow, but for the most part, we are writing these sort of bigger things. And so when you're considering, and I'm not putting Tanya back on the spot, when you're considering creating that proposal, do you know what primary resources that you're using? Do you know what primary sources you're using? Do you know what secondary sources? Like, what are you bringing in? Last time, and I'm going to flip us back if I can to this, which is a reminder of a really important piece of thing for me, which is remembering to update your citations so that they're inclusive, updated, recent, and revised, right? thinking about making sure that you've got references that lean towards material published in the last 5 or so years, right? If you're looking at secondary sources. That's part of what doing scholarly work is about making sure that we're staying on top of what's happening in our field, right? And so that's one of the things I really want us to think about as we're thinking about our projects. Okay. So now, most proposals don't have works cited, right, or reference lists, right, but they might have a quote or two. So it's really about giving that hint, that understanding that you understand which scholarly sources. I think one of the things we often see from even established scholars is not understanding sometimes that we should be making hints to the research that exists, right? I'm guilty of that myself, right? That I create an abstract, I create a proposal that does not indicate to the folks looking at it what research I'm looking at. Maybe just the thing, the object, the artifact. So making sure it's clear where we're leaning in what we're arguing. Okay. So, oh wait, let me back up one second. Anyone want to share anything else here? Oh, some chat going on. I want to make sure I miss it. Don't miss it. What are the best ways to address the overlaps among areas aside from not thinking about it? That is one option. Are there some devices to optimize these connections, roundtables with multiple areas? Yeah, Jeffrey, that's a great question. As we all know, right, like lots of the areas overlap, right? We have some what we'll call some more niche areas. Like for instance, I'm talking about the vampire area. You could easily also present in the horror area or the sci-fi area, depending on what kind of vampires you're talking about, right? So thinking through where my suggestion is always to think about what is the prime goal of your research, your proposal, right? Like, and here's why. Who's going to give you the best feedback? Which group of scholars are going to be able to speak to your main focus the best? So for instance, if I'm doing work on, okay, we'll talk about Sinners since that was my example, right? If I'm doing work on representations of root work in Sinners, right? While it is a vampire film, and I could easily stick with my vampire folks, if I really wanted to dig into more of the root work and more of the mysticism that's behind that film, I may consider this year presenting in a special topic area that is around divination. Like we have a special topic area that's divination, tarot, mysticism, that kind of thing. I might consider going that route, right? Because I would get more feedback from the scholars that focus on that, which is maybe the thing I need more feedback on. Perhaps I might want to present in the Black performing arts area because I really feel like I need more feedback on Black studies and cultural theory around critical race theory, right? Like something like that. Does that make sense? So Jeffrey, that's what I'm thinking about, like thinking about those overlaps. That's how to address. Now, I'll also say, like, look, if you've already found your home, if like the vampire area is your home and that's where you want to stay, again, I'm using that as my example, or sci-fi is your home and that's where you want to stay, then create your proposal that goes to fit with that area, right? But otherwise, I would optimize those things that way. And if you want to optimize those connections in a different way, like with roundtables, that's when reach out to the area chairs of those areas. I think that's really smart, and say, hey, I think this year, again, I'll use the example that I'm going with, like Sinners, we should have like probably horror, vampires, the divination, special topic area, Black performing arts. We should probably all do a joint roundtable on Sinners, quite frankly, right? Given the juggernaut that it is. And that would make some sense. So sometimes the area chairs of that area will do some of that ahead of time for you all. And other times it is that we need to we do it, right? Like the participants, we say, gosh, I really want to do this, and we start pulling people in. So ecology and culture area. Post fossil fuel imaginaries. That's amazing. Okay, y'all in the chat are awesome. Amanda, to answer your question about multiple presentations, you are only allowed to do one paper presentation at the conference. So that means one area you have to pick. Now you can serve on a round table as well. So just that's an important note. Yeah, I ran into that, had some worries last year. Stay in the area that I talk about with more authority, or take the leap into an area where you're less familiar. That's a challenge, right, Brett? I found that challenge. I've done a few presentations in other areas in my 17 years. I always go back to vampires. That's my home, but I have found it to use a word that is maybe not the right word, but for me, it's the word that's coming to my brain. I found it very generative to go to other areas, right? It pushed me outside my comfort zone a little bit, but it also meant that I got a different type of feedback than I have traditionally gotten about the topic that I'm working on. And those years that I presented outside of vampires, I needed the specific feedback that I was looking for from specific types of scholars. So I presented in romance one year because I was working specifically on vampires and romance. And I know the vampire stuff really well. The romance stuff I like in my spare time, but I wasn't as well versed from a scholarly perspective, right? And so going into there to present helped me get some really solid feedback to improve my argument and my piece, which eventually got published. But yes, you can be, Amanda, yes, one paper, and you can be on a roundtable. Do you apply to be a part of a roundtable as a solo scholar? I would say we typically roundtables are put together, or they're suggested by a full panel of folks. What I will say is that often area chairs are the ones who are pulling together the roundtables. Heather, this is a question that you might also be able to weigh in on some. And now we in the vampire area have had people reach out to us and say, we'd like to do a roundtable on X topic. We've had single individuals, Amanda, to answer that part of the question, reach out and say, I'd really love to do a roundtable on X topic, but I don't know enough folks. And we will put out a call to say, hey, someone wants to facilitate a roundtable on this. Anyone else interested in helping? Heather
thought that areas can only have one roundtable per area, so usually it goes through the area chairs.
Yeah, I think we are down to one roundtable. That's why, like, if you're interested in a roundtable, if there's a topic that you think is worth a conversation that isn't a paper, if that makes sense, because that's what a roundtable, reach out to that area chair. Yeah, that's the way to do that. Okay. I will keep coming back to questions. Okay. Keep putting questions in the chat. So yeah, it's already a giant conference. If those of us who can't do one, who like to do multiple topics and essentially be little magpies of scholarship, got to present on as many things as were in our brains, we would never leave whatever conference site we're at. Like, we would be there for 2 full weeks and we wouldn't sleep or eat or know that the city exists south. So, okay. All right, so how do you build a timeline? We talked about this a little bit last month, but I want to dig into it a little bit more, which is to think about the backward design. So if you have to have it done no later than November 30th because the submissions close, how do you get that put together? How do you figure out what timeline? First, and I'm using Northern Hemisphere language because that's where I'm at. So if you're not in fall coming into August and September, I apologize. So what's your fall look like? What's your upcoming semester look like, or your upcoming quarter look like? And when do you actually have time that you're going to build in to do the work, right? November 30th is a terrible time for me because I work at a school that is on quarters. And that is right at the transition between fall quarter and winter quarter, which means we get busy again, right? So between finals and kickoff to new academic semester or quarter is really rough for me. So no, I can't put my abstract proposal in on November 30th. It will totally get lost, right? So, which is really hard as an ADHD kid to not look at November 30th and think, oh, I've got time, because that's what I do, right? So what does that time period look like, right? And again, for those of us who are about to start a new academic year, this is a terrible time to start thinking about what your proposal is going to be and what you're going to be doing, because you probably don't have a ton of time to do it. So make sure you're building those things. The other thing that I think is important is once you write that initial draft of that abstract or proposal, how long do you need to let it stew after you write it before you come back and make final edits on it, right? Some people can do 2 hours or 12 hours or 24 hours, and some people need to let things sit for 10 days, right? To feel like they can come back to it and give it. What's your stew time? Do you all know? Do you know how long you need to let something settle before you can come back and do a real edit that feels somewhat objective, right? Somewhat removed enough that you can actually make edits and not just what you think you said, but what actually is said on the piece of paper? What's your stew time, folks? Does anyone know? 2 days, a week, 1 to 1,000 days. Yeah. It depends on what Chris's stew time is whatever I've allowed myself to have. That's my interpretation.
Panic.
Panic. Yeah. At least a day. Yeah, Brett, you and I. Yeah, I finally get I get clarity after I already click submit, and I'm like, damn, that sentence was terrible. What did I do? Oh no, here's the better argument, right? Anyone else? Okay. If you don't know this for yourself, take a little time to think about it. I encourage you to go ahead and write your proposal now, and then do some increments. Do a 2-hour increment, do a 12-hour increment, do a 24-hour increment, do a 2-day increment, and see before you edit anything, like read it through and see if you can see, right? When you have a little bit more objectivity, a little bit more removal from it, to know that what is in your brain is what is actually on the paper. Does what I'm saying make some sense? I'll check in with how people are feeling. That makes sense, Chris. I think yeah, I have a tendency, for those of you who maybe do this too, like also have a tendency to sort of stream of consciousness, right? Which means that sometimes I have to take the little jibe at things, or the little sly slick comment about something. Right? Those things have got to go. Yeah, okay. All right. So this is our opportunity to really think and talk for about, sorry, all of my clocks just went like turned off. For about 10 minutes. We're gonna just do some, and I'm gonna turn off the share to just say like, okay, how are you all feeling about research design? We've now had 2 conversations about it. For those of you who were able to be here last month, we're thinking in depth about it now. What questions you have, what thoughts are on your brain about these pieces. And then like we need to save about a few minutes at the end to go over some like housekeeping fun stuff, like, you know, the other part of the membership matters. But let's talk. What are you all thinking about? It sounds like some of you have some ideas of what you're going to do for this conference, but what are you thinking about research and research design? Do you have any hot takes about research design? Feel free to drop it in the chat as well. Oh, I just lost you all like completely. Sorry, I do not know why I just posted that way. As an independent scholar, I feel the same about my subject, my plan going back for years, some writing published, but it's sometimes hard to explain why it's important. I do think that that's the piece, right? How many of you, you know, I just, so a little tidbit, my nephew is applying to college and we're working on his personal essay. This is a small issue example of this. And he wrote this really great essay. And I said, Blake, so what? It's great. Thank you for that touching story. I really loved it. I cried a lot. It was wonderful. But so what? What does that tell us, right? As admission counselors or people looking at scholarships as to how you're going to apply that to college. And I said, it's going to sound like a mean question, and I don't mean it like a mean question. I'm saying we have to explain why what you just shared is A, impactful, and B, what you're going to do with it. And I think sometimes, Erica, you're so right. It's so hard sometimes to explain why what we are doing is important, because to us, it is important. We just told you why it's important, right? When I write about, you know, whatever I'm writing about, to me, it's important. It's huge, right? But I have to explain what's happening in my brain, which is not always easy, to an outside reader as to why to connect with that, right? And so sometimes I ask myself that question that I ask my nephew. And again, I don't mean it mean. I don't mean to be condescending or flip. What I mean when I say so what is tell me why that matters. That's a great approach, Erica. I think you're right. How do you do that? Jeffrey starts with the abstract, then builds an outline. That's great. I'm glad that you're able to do that. I hope that you're able to stick to that outline or edit that outline in really great ways that are good for you. Does anyone else create outlines? Okay, Latoya creates outlines. Yeah. Ethics is a very slow process, Chris. I agree. Absolutely. How do we get what's happening in our brain to other people, right? And for those of us, like lots of folks were sharing earlier, like about their neurodiversity, I think one of the struggles for those of us who are neurodiverse is that what is happening in our brain is so clear to us. And then we attempt to share it with someone else. And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You took 7 leaps that make no sense. You connected things that I don't understand how you got from there to there, right? So sometimes it is about reminding ourselves, and this goes for everyone, whether you're neurodivergent or not. Sometimes we have to slow down in our process of research and our process of scholarship and explain how we made those connections, right? And Heather, yes, 100%. Think you think in the PowerPoint, right? Like, and what Heather, do you want to, if you can you talk about what you mean by that?
I always, it probably comes from being how I was taught to write in junior high. They made us put everything on note cards and then sort our note cards out to write our papers. And to me, that's just PowerPoint. And when I say I think in PowerPoint, I did this at my job the other day. They wanted me to present them some information on some different options we had for something. And I made a PowerPoint. And they're like, that must have taken too long. And I was like, this took me 10 minutes. If you wanted me to write an email, that would have taken an hour. Here's some pretty pictures of your options. Pick one. But PowerPoint's
Yeah,
an outline.
it is, and it's an outline that probably works a little better for us. And I think like what Jeffrey said, it's visual, right? Often, because if you're making a good PowerPoint, it doesn't have tons of words on it, right? It shouldn't be, I mean, you all have seen the kind of PowerPoint that I am referring to as, I'm going to use the word problematic. If you make those kinds of PowerPoints, we can talk. You've seen the ones that are so densely packed in words that you can barely read the text, right? That's not what PowerPoint is designed for. PowerPoint is designed to be highlights, bullet points with some images to create that like visual, verbal connection, right? So if you can do that with your PowerPoint, that's the only way I know how to make outlines. For those of you who outline, I cannot outline. Like I literally will, when I've had to turn an outline in for school, I write the paper and then I go back and make an outline and I turn that outline in because I can't figure out, my brain doesn't figure out how to make an outline. I can make a PowerPoint. I can't make an outline, right? In the standard way. So think about some of those things, but if you can think about a PowerPoint as an outline, that's super helpful. Once I realized that, I did some of that work. Skeleton outlines. Oh, take out the trash. I procrastinate and procrastinate whenever I am in the midst of a project. So if you lived close to me, you would get a lot of baked goods, and my house is the cleanest it's ever been. You should, yeah. So that's like a lot for us. And a panic, I think, is after every step we panic, right? That's me at least, like panic, 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 talk to my therapist, panic, 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 write 3 sentences, talk to my therapist. Like this is how that works. And I said that jokingly, but it's actually not really a joke, right? So, and the other thing, I see some of the outline stuff and some of the stuff resonating with folks. Just remember, one of the things that I have hit on a couple of times in several sessions that we've done is trust yourself as a scholar. Do what makes sense for your brain and how you function as a scholar. You have to be realistic about who you are as a scholar and how you navigate these things. Whether it's I don't make outlines, PowerPoint doesn't work for me, whatever those things are, be realistic. If you know that a fake deadline that you create in your brain is never going to work, okay, then how do you fix this, right? So that's one of the things, is be honest with yourself and be honest about who you are as a scholar, and find the people who are willing to sit with you in that, right? So as a reminder, hi, Amanda, I'm here, not just because I'm your vice president of Belonging Outreach and Membership, but because I care about scholars. I care about pop culture scholars and I want this to get better. So always feel free, you can reach out. I'll meet one-on-one. Y'all, I am a coach and nearly a certified coach, and academics and scholars are who I'm focused on. That's not to say I'm telling you hire me. I'm telling you call me, and we will work together because you all are members of the organization that I care about, right? So if you need someone to help you navigate some of this stuff, let's do that. Okay, Amanda's question. How can we make that research and writing process smoother then? Does it come down to self-trust rather than panic? I think it comes down to both self-trust and panic. And what I mean by that is, and this is my moment for a hot take. Yes, we need to learn to trust ourselves. Every single one of you showed up on a Friday afternoon in August because you are badass, brilliant scholars. That's not to say that the other people who didn't show up aren't badass, brilliant scholars, but you're badass, brilliant scholars who chose to show up on a Friday afternoon, 2 a.m. for someone like Chris, right? Because you care about your scholarly work and you found a connection in an organization. So trust yourself and know that you are a good scholar. Be realistic about who you are as a scholar, and that helps. But know that sometimes panic actually is, and hopefully you can dial it back from panic to like pressure. That pressure can help us facilitate movement, right? For some of us, for those of us who because there are people I've learned that panic actually doesn't help them be better at things like writing or meeting deadlines. If that's you, we can talk about other methods. I'm not so strong at that, but I do work with people who actually don't panic right and don't pressure right, who like actually can make deadlines for themselves that they meet. It's wild to me, but they do it, right? If that's not your experience, let the pressure push you forward, right? What takes up a lot of time is that it's hard to estimate your reading list, right? That those books, those articles, the newly discovered work. Oh my gosh, the rabbit hole of I just read this article and it quotes this other thing that, oh my gosh, I have to go read. That is how I scholar, right? I have to go back to the first thing, and then the thing before that, and then like 3 days later, I've now read 6 books that like may not actually be the thing that I was just working on, right? So if that feels like you, or if you feel like you don't know how to estimate, there are some good tools out there for, and I'll find some of them and share them with you all. So reach out to me about how to skim things better, right? Like how to figure out if a thing's going to be useful for your research, how to take some good notes. We had Ben, who was here at one of the sessions, shared really cool approach to doing annotated bibliographies, and the way that she does them. So like thinking about doing some of those pieces could be helpful. But you're right. I think the reading part of our job as scholars is the part that is the hardest to quantify. So uh, I always book double the amount of time I think it's going to take me. So if I think I have 3 books and 7 articles, and I think that's going to take me 2 days. I say, no, Amanda Jo, that's going to take you 4 days to do, right? And by 4 days, I mean 4 days of 4 hours each day, right? So I think it's going to take me a total of 24 hours to get through that material, right? And then, so I schedule it. Does that help? Yes, the reading list is never ending, Erica. I agree. Do you read a whole article? Yeah, I don't particularly ever read whole things. I mean, I try, but I find it can be sometimes difficult, especially when um again, time, right? We never have enough time. Oh yeah, don't forget to schedule the rabbit holes. Agreed. So for some of us, it maybe isn't about scheduling double the time, but scheduling triple the time, right? Okay, friends. Other thoughts? Um, How do people cultivate space and focus for reading scholarly stuff? Oh, yeah, that's a big question. Amanda, the thing that I found I had to do, 100% had to do, is I literally schedule time. I literally schedule reading time, like research reading time, not just writing time, reading time. Um, I scheduled that into my days. I decided a while ago that I'm going to do 5 hours of scholarly reading a week, and it is literally in my schedule. And I literally make myself sit down and do that. I actually built a reading scholar research nook in my office. There's my little reading nook in my office, and I shut my door and I sit there and I read for 5 hours a week. That maybe isn't everyone's um opportunity. So if you have other things going on and you can't do that, and I do have to do that in my office versus at home. I have a, I call him a puppy. He is not a puppy. He is a 4-year-old dachshund. If you've ever met a dachshund, you know that there is no such thing as sitting down and quiet time when there is a 4-year-old dachshund in the house. If you have toddlers, you can also say the same thing about toddlers. If you have teenagers, you can say the same thing about teenagers. If you have a cat, hopefully your cat doesn't eat all of your research paper. But that's all the cats I know are obsessed with paper. So try to make yourself a schedule for reading. Kitty likes to sleep on papers. Okay, but the kitty doesn't eat the papers. That's been my experience, friends. So I am other ideas, thoughts, questions. I know we're like running close to time. Oh, oh, I saw a chat. I saw a chat. I can't find it. Sorry, y'all. I shared my screen and then I can't find anything again. Audiobooks do help. And I love an ebook, and I'm not advertising this. I get no kickback from these things, but I have a Kindle Scribe. I know folks who have have Remarkables. The reason why I like these is they're e-ink and I can write in them. So I put my books or my PDFs on here. Means I have my entire research on this thing as opposed to in a bunch of papers. It's tangible. It's e-ink, so it's like writing on paper. I can do that better with the things that I need, and I can literally make my notes in it and then send them to myself, right? So if that's helpful, body doubling is incredibly important. Again, there are not just, if you've got folks in your life that are able to do that, great. Find writing circles. Before I wrap us up, let me ask a question. Would you all find it helpful if PCA offered like a time a week where people logged in and did like body doubling or accountability check-ins or like for writing and scholarship? So much. Okay. Yes, but 2 a.m. is brutal. I think we would have to find like a time. My thought would be that maybe we do couple of different times and we say like, hey, Chris, would you be willing to facilitate the accountability sessions or whatever we're going to call them, the writing circle for the folks in not the Eastern time zone? And like, hey, our friend Nicole, who's a vice president, or Heather, would you be willing to facilitate the West Coast ones, right? So that they could be at better times.
Absolutely. Yeah, put me down for that. I would definitely do that for us Antipodean, types
Okay.
and those on the UTC 8 to 12 kind of band. Yeah,
Okay.
easy. Put me
Cool.
down.
So
Put me
I
in,
will,
coach.
yeah. Okay. So it's one of the things that's been on my radar as something that I think would be super helpful. I know some of the areas are doing some things like that, but I know that there are some folks that haven't quite found a connection with an area. So doing in the same way, right? But like that, doing a bigger one would maybe be helpful. So I look for that soon. If you're interested in helping facilitate those or being the person to like put out the call and make sure that people have got the links and those kinds of things, just drop me a note. I'll put my email address in the chat. So again, just a quick reminder, the conference is in April. These are our wrap up things. Your membership does matter. We're so glad that you're here. Please keep coming back. We meet the second Friday of every month. This one was a little funky, I recognize, because I think technically this was the third Friday of the month, but because the first was on a Friday, so I think technically, but they're usually this time. I hope this is helpful. Please come back. If there are topics you'd really like us to cover, let us know. Oh, I didn't update the slide. Next month, I think I'll be honest and say I don't remember what we're covering. So check it out. I forgot to update that slide. Terrible. So please let us know if you have any questions. I'll hang out for a few minutes. We're gonna stop the recording. I got it. Don't worry, Riley, I got it. And then just hang out if you need to ask other questions. And